All right, Kat, over to you.
Good afternoon and welcome to the second webinar in the e-construction series entitled Building the Policy and Technology Base. This is part of Federal Highway's Everyday Counts program to spotlight existing e-construction technologies. Just a reminder to please place your questions in the Q&A pod. We will not be taking questions via phone or mics or via the chat pod. You will need to type your questions into the Q&A pod on the left middle of your screen. I'm Kat Wiesner from Federal Highways Resource Center, and I am opening today's webinar, and I will be introducing our speakers. This is our agenda for today. During today's webinar, we will hear from Michigan DOT, Florida DOT, and the Federal Highways Michigan Division. We will conclude with a moderated Q&A session. I'd like to take a moment to introduce our speakers for the webinar right now. First up is Stuart Lasko from the Michigan DOT. Stuart is the ProjectWise Construction Analyst for the Michigan Department of Transportation. Stuart has been involved in the e-construction project in Michigan since the pilot kicked off and has been working with Michigan DOT project documentation since 1992. Amy Tootle is from the Florida DOT and is our second presenter. Amy began her career in transportation hydraulics after graduating from the University of Florida in 1999. A majority of her career has been spent in the private sector designing and permitting limited access highways before working for a contractor as a field engineer. She joined Florida DOT in the fall of 2010, where she started the State Hydraulics Office in Tallahassee. Ms. Tootle is now the State Construction Engineer, where she oversees construction specialty engineers and the development of policy and procedures for construction. For the past 2.5 years, she has been setting the stage for construction to go paperless within the Florida Department of Transportation. And last but not least, we have Robert Frizzle. Robert has served as an area engineer in the Federal Highways Michigan Division for over 5 years. He has been supporting the state's move towards e-construction and the division at the division office level. Robert is currently working with headquarters and several other divisions to pilot the division office tablets, which directly support the state's use of e-construction. We will conclude the webinar with a moderated question and answer session moderated by Francesca Meyer, consultant to WSP Parsons Brinkerhoff. This is the second webinar in the series of 4 for the winter 2015-2016. There will be 4 more webinars in the winter of 2016-2017. Those topics will be developed based on feedback through this webinar series and arising out of the peer exchanges and regional conferences that are also in the works. You can keep abreast of developments in the webinar series and locate recordings of all the webinars via the E-Construction Today website. There are also 3 construction regional conferences in 2016 hosted by Federal Highways through our Everyday Counts initiative. The first will be held on March 1st and 2nd in Salt Lake City, Utah. The topic will be e-construction and 3D engineer model, schedule, cost, and post-construction. The second conference will be held in Dearborn, Michigan on March 30th and 31st of 2016. This workshop will have 2 tracks, one for management and the other for a technical track. This workshop will be hosted by the Michigan DOT. The third workshop will be held later this year in October 26th and 27th in Suffolk, Virginia. The topics will be e-construction and 3D engineer model, schedule, cost, and post-construction. This will be hosted by the Virginia Department of Transportation. For more information about these conferences, please contact Brian Colley in Federal Highways Office of Infrastructure. We also have available under our EDC 3 Everyday Counts e-construction peer exchanges. Through these peer exchange opportunities, states will receive individualized help through facilitated discussion either virtually or in person. We have 11 of our 15 in-person slots currently available, and all 3 of our virtual peer exchange slots are available. States need to complete an application for each peer exchange. They will be contacted within 2 weeks of their submittal to begin the process of developing an in-person or virtual peer exchange. State DOTs and Federal Highway Division offices should contact Brian Colley for more information. His contact information is listed here and will be available on the Federal Highways e-construction website. Both funding and spots for these peer exchanges are limited, so act now. Next, we have our everyday counts for innovation submissions. Time is running out to send in your best innovation suggestions. There are only a couple weeks left to respond to Federal Highway's request for information to identify proven, market-ready innovations to deploy the fourth round of everyday counts. The EDC4 request for information closes on January 31st. In addition to conducting market research for EDC4, Federal Highway is collecting feedback on 15 high-value innovations of interest. Federal Highway will collaborate with stakeholders to implement the EDC4 innovations in 2017 and 2018. In the words of Director Greg Nadeau, our hope is that adding new innovations and processes to the EDC roster, we can continue transforming the way highway transportation communities do business by shortening project delivery time, enhancing roadway safety, reducing traffic congestion, and improving environmental sustainability. I'd like to encourage you to participate in two ways, through polls and questions or comments. Please take a moment to respond to the polls. It is helpful to us to know this information as it puts our other poll responses into context and helps us tailor our outreach to ensure we're meeting our intended audience. Thank you. We should see the Q&A dialog box in the center of your screen. And please type in your questions in the Q&A dialog box at any time during the presentation. We will hold questions until the end, when we will have a moderated Q&A. We will not be holding a live Q&A, so please be sure to use the dialog box to get your questions in the queue. Our first speaker.
Thanks, Kat. It's still with me here. I've got two sets of polls. The first one is our demographic information, and so I can see that some other folks are typing in another option in the chat, so thank you for that. When the response rate slows down on the demographics, then I'm going to switch over to another set of polls. All right, so thank you. The next set are coming up. All right, thank you, everybody. I'm bringing the presentation back up, and then over to you, Stu.
Thank you, Ches. Again, my name is Stu Loxa with Michigan Department of Transportation. I'll wait till the, I lost my internet. Oh, yeah. Okay, technical issues aside.
Can you transfer it over to Rob Fiegel? Oh, looks like we got it. Okay, thank you.
Like most states' DOTs, Michigan had some electronic paperless components already in place prior to the e-construction initiative. We had electronic plans and proposals, a construction administration software, and an electronic bidding tool. In Michigan, those tools were PDF formatted plans and proposals distributed via the web. And our construction engineering software was Field Manager, which allowed us to collect construction data electronically from the field. For the electronic bidding component, we still use Bid Express, and both Field Manager and Bid Express are provided by Infotech. While we had all of these great tools in place, we still had a vast amount of paperwork on our construction projects. In fact, our MDOT Construction Field Services conducted a quick informal review of 4 completed projects back in 2011. These projects contained about 4,000 pieces of paper. All of those documents in that file that were not created on a computer were set to one side, all 24 pages. Almost every document in those files were typed up in either Word or in another computer program and then printed out and put in our paper files. So we asked ourselves, why were we printing out these documents just to store them as paper files? Why not keep those electronic files electronic? It was clear that for us, computers were really only a more efficient means of creating paper documents. So Michigan found it necessary to add a few additional components to reach our goal of truly paperless contract administration. One of the most critical was embracing the digital signature process to replace those ink and paper signatures. This initial step was first implemented in 2011 and was calculated to save MDOT an estimated $6 million per year in paper printing, postage, and overhead expenses. The next step was a culture change to fully embrace the mobile devices and smartphones. 3 years ago, a significant portion of our MDOT inspection staff still had flip phones. The switch to smartphones truly enabled the field staff to become more efficient and helped enable a culture of seeking continuous improvement to find ways to do their job better, faster, and cheaper. Many of the best new apps and procedures came from field staff empowered with those tools. The next critical step was the development of a document management software that enabled all parties involved in the construction project to submit and access their construction documents. While MDOT had previously piloted a few paperless projects using email, it was clear that a document management system was necessary. That document management system came online for construction in late fall of 2012 and streamlined and created uniformity for the paperless contract administration process on a statewide basis. And it was a critical component to our overall success. In order to be fully paperless, we needed to update our construction manuals and guides to be more compatible with mobile devices and eliminate the milk crates of paper reference documents that were in the inspectors' vehicles. The last component was simple and straightforward. The construction paperless administration process became a mandatory contract requirement. This was actually better received than we first imagined, as the majority of the contractors and consultants were eager for these changes and wanted them to be implemented quickly. Altogether, these final 5 components were what truly allowed MDOT to reach its goal of paperless construction administration. MDOT embraced the digital signature solution inherent to the Adobe Acrobat software to replace ink and paper signatures. We had that software evaluated by our Attorney General's office, who concluded that this legally valid digital signature met all the requirements of the Federal e-Sign Act of 2000, FHWA contract administration regulations from CFR 23, and state regulations to allow those documents to be considered original signatures and those documents to be considered legal documents. For our department, this was an easy choice, as Adobe Acrobat is a standard program on all of our computers. But for our business partners, this choice was somewhat more problematic. Adobe Acrobat is an expensive software package, and to use it for digital signatures is really only using part of that of the capabilities of that software. There are other software packages that you can use to create a valid digital signature, but since our department used Adobe, we have limited knowledge of those other solutions, and that limits our ability to troubleshoot and provide support for our partners. Keeping and distributing a statewide database of validated signatures has also been a problem. And the mobile solution that we selected was not as simple as we would have preferred. We found a free product called FormApps Mobile that allowed us to utilize our Adobe created signature on mobile devices. But again, it was not a solution that was ideal. So given these difficulties, the department decided to contract this solution to a vendor who would solve all of our problems. This process to develop a department-wide solution has begun, but is unfortunately not yet complete for Michigan. It was actually our contracting agency who first brought up the paperless solution to MDOT. They were tired of documents getting lost in the mail or misrouted, and our management was tired of hearing those complaints. Our contracting agency recommended a third-party document management solution to MDOT, but the department's engineering support services got involved and offered a different solution. It was Bentley's ProjectWise document management system. The selection of ProjectWise as our document management system was another easy solution, as MDOT was already using it along with MicroStation for our design process. That meant we had 10 years of institutional knowledge with the software, and we didn't have to go through the lengthy procurement process to select a new solution. We did have to open some firewalls, however, to allow for external access. This was a source of many battles between our department and our central IT department. Like many states, Michigan has a centralized IT department, and it took great effort on our part and the part of our management to communicate this need to our central IT department and get this firewall open in a secure fashion. We also knew that the increased network activity would put a strain on our already overloaded system, so an initiative was undertaken to upgrade our infrastructure. This initiative was long overdue, as some offices were still operating on T1 lines, but this, like all efforts to upgrade, did cost a significant amount of money. In the end, however, it was a necessary step which will serve MDOT well in all areas as communication over networks continues to grow. With those tools in place, we then set about to convert our paper document processes to an electronic format, so that documents would follow those required approval paths. Other challenges in getting e-construction up and running in Michigan were the management of hundreds of new users, external users, setting up their accounts, ensuring proper security settings, and things of that nature. There was also a significant amount of training required for both internal staff and outside vendors and contractors. All of this was accomplished under a deadline for the kickoff for that first pilot project in 2012. The electronic document submittal system was designed to mirror our existing paper process. We didn't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and change everything, so we simply took our paper process and made it an electronic process. This greatly eased the learning curve for our construction personnel. Having all of the information on a construction project in one location eliminated all of those he said, she said disagreements and provided that single source of truth that everyone desired. Having your documents online made them secure from natural disasters such as flood and fire. They're also backed up, so if a document got removed, we could recover that document. ProjectWise provided intelligent workflows, document routing, known approval status, and email notifications. All of these are benefits of employing a document management system. And we also had the audit trails to increase the transparency on a construction project. We knew when something was submitted, exactly when something was submitted, who submitted it, and things of that nature. ProjectWise is also accessible with a desktop application, a web browser, and a mobile solution for the iPad. And those digital signatures allowed those documents, those legal documents, to be stored electronically. So moving on to mobile devices. Some of our key challenges with mobile devices back in 2012, if you think back to that, were the public perception of the iPad. The iPad at that time was a new device. It was seen as more of a consumption tool, not a business tool, so we did have to overcome those public perception challenges when we delivered those devices to the construction project. The field staff was just great, embracing that new technology. They were enthusiastic contributors in finding new ways to use the tools, new applications that would allow them to do their job more efficiently. We do also have the issue that many states have, that some areas we don't get a cell signal. So we have a few different tools that were reviewed to help us with those problems. We did look at a signal booster for those areas where cell signals were low, and we also had in some cases when there was no cell signal, we had to resort to simply storing those documents on your mobile device and then uploading them at a later time when you were within cell range. There are many advantages to having mobile devices out in the field. The most important one is that you're capturing data one time, you're collecting that information at one time, you're not copying it down on a scratch sheet of paper and then transferring that data, so there's no rekey errors. Also, that data that you collect gets transferred to the field, or from the field to the office in real time when you have access to the ProjectWise document management system out in the field. Our field inspectors now with their iPhones had real-time access to the field office, not only the field office, their bosses out in the field offices, but also to specialists in our Lansing office or wherever they would reside. All of this allowed our field inspectors to really spend more time on the job, and it's proven that there is a correlation between increased inspection time and quality on construction projects. Some of those tools that the inspectors used on their mobile devices were PDF Expert by Readdle for filling out forms and marking up PDF plans. We used Mobile Inspector by Infotech for collecting pay item and daily work information. The Formapps mobile software that I mentioned before for signing documents on an iPad or an iPhone. And then ProjectWise Explorer Mobile by Bentley Systems for mobile access to project documents. But really, laptop computers are still the mobile device of choice in Michigan. But by using your iPhone as a hotspot, we allow them to be connected in the field, so they have become more mobile. In addition to the laptop, the iPhone, MDOT has issued over 1,100 iPhones and 600 iPads to increase the mobility of its workforce. And we are continuing to invest in the most updated apps that fit into our overall e-construction strategy. The Windows tablet market is still developing, and we are exploring that as well. We have about 160 Windows tablets out in the field today. We did need to develop some policies and put them in place to enable e-construction. We didn't go overboard in creating new policies here in Michigan. We did develop a special provision that was added to the pilot projects, and currently all MDOT trunk line projects that mandated the exclusive use of ProjectWise for all document submittals. So contractors are not allowed to email documents. They're certainly not allowed to mail paper documents. All documents must be transmitted through our document management system. We did have to review our current specifications for words like submit 3 copies and send by mail, things like that. So we had to take a close look at all of our current specifications to make sure that they didn't have paper-based requirements in them. And we did develop a construction wiki, really a groundbreaking tool for us that marks a move from a static policy, a document, to a more agile system where changes can be communicated without a complete rewrite of the document. We still do have some relatively static guidance documents, but they're all in electronic format, and they're frequently downloaded to mobile devices. So in conclusion, we feel that we are in the dinosaur stage of e-construction, but we have made that difficult transition from a paper-based system to the digital age. And this single step makes it possible so many other changes that could not be considered without making the break from paper. We have a long way to go, but with the model that we have in place, we believe that we can get there.
All right, thank you, Stu. I have some more polls. And just a reminder, in the middle on the left of your screen is where the questions and answers dialog is. So you can type your questions in there, any questions you have for Stu or for Kat, and we'll hold those to the end after Rob and Amy.
Thank you. Today I want to speak
Okay, it looks like the response rate is slowing down, so I'm bringing the presentation back up, and then over to you, Amy.
Over the last couple of years, in order for us to become paperless in construction. I'm specifically going to talk to you about our document management system, the use of mobile devices, digital signatures, and specifications, and what we've done with that realm.
Now, with our document management system here at FDOT, we have two different components to our document management system. The first, which is our temporary site called ProjectSolve SP, and the second is our long-term storage site called EDMS. Now, a couple years ago, we contracted with PB for them to host a site outside of our firewall, which would allow us to collaborate with all of our stakeholders on a construction project. The site they host is ProjectSolve SP, also known as PSSP. Now, this is a SharePoint-based site that is off the shelf and dynamically configurable to meet our needs. And how it works is that when a project is activated in Site Manager, the district administrator will set up a new project directory in ProjectSolve, which again is hosted outside of the firewall. And when that is done, all the forms that are in our FDOT forms library, which are our standard forms, we have over 100, will then be pre-populated with the project-specific information, such as the contract number, the FIN number, maybe the contractor itself, their name, just to standardize all the forms for that project-specific information. And as a project progresses and people need to download the forms from the forms library, they download them from the library itself, and then they go ahead and fill it out to meet the project-specific information. And when they're done and they're complete, they upload it back in to the library that is meets the needs of the form, and it is housed in that site until it is ready to go into our EDMS system. So all our construction documentation will take place in the ProjectSolve site. So all RFIs, contract changes such as supplemental agreements, any sort of QA approvals, as-built, all of this is housed in this ProjectSolve SP temporary document management site. And as a project progresses, say you have a supplemental agreement that needs approval, we have workflows that are built in so that when the document is uploaded, it will then alert the next person in the chain of command that they need to go to ProjectSolve and provide their acceptance of the form. And then it will, again, go through the workflow to the next person until the document is complete. And now once all documents are finalized, or that particular document is finalized, then the project administrator will attribute it to the specific location of where it needs to go into EDMS. And then on a nightly basis, we have workflows that will grab the forms and then pull them through our firewall and put them into our EDMS system. Now, one such form, just to show you what it looks like, one of our controlling items of work forms, in the yellow I highlighted for you to be able to see a little bit better. You'll see the FIN number, the contract number, and we've also put in digital signature blocks to all the forms that require signatures. So these are the standard forms in that forms library. Again, in the ProjectSolve, we have another folder for project plans. So all our CAD files, all our original PDF plan sets, and then our final as-built are all placed in this project plans directory. So as a revision comes along through the design process and the construction process, the revised plan files are signed and then put into this directory. If our resident engineer is updating the final as-built plans as the project progresses, he will then put those in that final as-built folder. So it's very transparent, so everybody has access to viewing the files at any given time. Now, all the other project documents that are used throughout the life of the construction project are put in the project documents file. So whether you have any job correspondence pertaining to drainage or the work project, work progress schedule, those are all put into this, this one library for documentation. So again, as I stated before, when the files are finalized, the project administrator will attribute it. So you'll see its job correspondence and then what type of job correspondence it is. So then when it's approved, it goes into our EDMS system, and it will then be able to do the searching in our long-term document storage directory. Now, our EDMS, which is our long-term storage, has been around for several years. The gut of it is Hummingbird, but we have some enterprise apps that have been developed to help us search a little bit more efficiently when we are looking for documents in our EDMS system. But how everything is attributed in ProjectSolve will then transfer over into our EDMS system. So if you can tell through those drop-down menus, you'll see the different categories that you'll be able to find that information. Now, the next aspect that we are dealing with our pursuit of e-construction is the use of mobile devices. Now, a couple years ago, I went out to one of our district offices, and I was riding around with one of our resident engineers, and he had an iPad mini that he purchased himself because he was having 4 different projects that he had to, ride around on every week, and they were 3 different light years. So he had 4 different plan sets, 3 different design standards, 3 different spec books, which equated to over 20,000 sheets of paper. And he just got tired of that, so he put everything on his iPad mini. Since most of our books and everything are e-books anyways, it was no big deal for him to be able to download that to a device. So that got us to thinking that we really needed to take that step and as an agency for our field users. So we decided to pilot some projects. And we decided to use an iPad Air 2 device at this time because our engineering and operations group had already done some pilots with Windows-based, but we just felt like it didn't meet the needs of our construction folks. So we wanted to go ahead and try the iPad Air 2. And so what we did is we got the Wi-Fi plus the cellular option. We got a 64 gigabyte device, threw on an OtterBox, and we provided them some unlimited data. So they weren't restricted to what they could do with the iPads. Now, we've had some great success with it, and some of the things that we really wanted to find out is how could they interface with our ProjectSolve SP site. Now, that site, again, was hosted outside of our firewall, and it's through the internet, so it shouldn't have been a problem, and it isn't a problem. We also wanted to see how they were able to then reconnect in to our system, our network, to be able to access our enterprise applications. So they've been successful in doing that through different applications, most particularly Junos Pulse. Having that video and meeting capability was very important. Also, being able to do as-built plans on the PDF, with the PDF documents on the tablet was extremely important because we want them to be able to update our plan set right there on the spot and not have to go back to the office. So they've been successful to be able to do that with Bluebeam. Having the email and calendar access obviously was a major issue that we really needed to have that at all times, and they're able to do that whether they use the OWA or Outlook. Having the site manager access through Citrix, and also having the ability to modify documents in Word and Excel using the MS Office apps, and using OneDrive to be able to put documents into their cloud system to be able to do that modification of the documents. Now, the next thing that we really had to tackle was the use of digital signatures. And here in Florida, we are guided by 2 major laws and a rule that kind of guided us in where we were going with the use of the digital signatures. The first one is our Florida Statute 668, and it's a 2-parter. The first part talks about electronic signatures, and then the second part talks about e-commerce. Now, it seems a bit backwards and how it's presented, but nevertheless, it's just what guides us. And the other statute and rule basically guides us in the legalities of how we put our digital signature for professional registrations, particularly engineering. since we are a very technical agency, that was very important to us. So I'm not going to get into the weeds with the statutes, but I wanted to just give you that opportunity to go back, maybe at a later date to look at it and see what we have on record. And basically, the first part of that Florida Statute 668 gives the definition of what it means for a digital signature for the state of Florida. And basically, to sum it up, it's just being able to apply a digital signature and being able to publicly verify that that signature is a valid signature. So it talks about the key pair, which is a private key and corresponding to a public key. And I'll get into that a little bit further when I talk into the digital signatures and show you the digital signature later on. The second part of that statute is the Uniform Electronic Transaction Act, the UETA, and that basically establishes e-commerce. So establishing the legal equivalence of electronic records and signatures with paper writings and manually signed signatures. Now, mostly all the states have adopted this. You would have to look and see where it is in your laws. The only states that I know that do not have it are Washington, Illinois, and New York. That's according to the federal website that I was looking at. So that may have changed those 3 states. If there's anybody on the line, you might want to go check and just see if that has changed in the past couple months. Now, the other law that guides us here at Florida Department of Transportation has to do with Florida Statute 471.025, subsection 1, and that talks about engineering seals. And again, it's just giving us the authority to use the electronic signatures and how you must do it. Again, referring back to the Florida Statute 668, that Florida Statute 668 is pretty much the key to what all of what we're doing. And lastly, the Florida Administrative Code. This was developed by our Florida Board of Professional Engineers, and our CAD systems group here at FDOT has been working hand in hand with the Florida Board of Professional Engineers for the past couple of years, crafting the different language. And basically, again, it's following Florida Statute 668 and being able to provide a capable of providing the verification and having that sole control under one person. I will say over the past 3 years, this has changed every year. As technology changes and as the engineering community comes on board with signing digitally, things get crafted a little bit differently. So we have to keep our pulse on what it really requires so each year we don't violate our registration. Now, with all of that said, I was stated earlier, these laws and rules in place are really kind of what guided us. We had a task team that was established to look into what our options were concerning signing documents digitally. So in accordance with what the laws and rules said, they went to seek out what we had available to us. And they came up with a company called IdenTrust because obviously it met the requirements of the statute, but it also had this access certificates for electronic services and provided a NIST Level 3 certification. Now the NIST Level 3 is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, and it's used by many federal government agencies, including the Department of Defense. So the task team, decided if it was good enough for the Department of Defense, it was good enough for the Florida Department of Transportation. So that's the direction our agency decided to head. And through that, to get an IdenTrust digital certificate, you have to go through an application process. Through that application process, you have to go to a notary and provide 2 forms of state ID or your passport to verify you are who you say you are. If your application is approved by IdenTrust, they will then, in the mail, send you a document that tells you how to then go to your laptop or mobile device and download the root certificate to be able to apply your digital certificate on documents. At that time, you create a PIN number, much like an ATM. And much like the ATM, you have to hold it close to your vest. And you don't give it out to anybody because that is how you sign the documents. And you ensure that you are who you say you are, and you are the only person applying that digital signature. With that, and doing commerce with the Department of Transportation, we also allow other digital signature vendors. We are not prohibiting what the outside stakeholders would use, other than as long as they comply with the Florida Statute 668. So there's many other vendors out there, and you just have to look and see what meets your business needs. But again, for us as an agency, for the near future, we're using IdenTrust. Now, how it works is you have a document, and you have your digital or your signature block, and you go in there, and you click on it, and it'll prompt you. A pop-up box will come up to input your PIN number. You input your PIN number, and you affix your digital signature. And in that box, you can put whatever you want in terms of what it should say in this box. So for instance, for me, I put in my name, my PE number, and then the date and time that the document was signed. So when I send this document to a person, that is on the receiving end, they will take the document, they will open it up, and they will click on it to do validate signature. And if it's a valid signature through that PKI public key infrastructure, the green check will affix itself, and we're good to go. Now, if anybody were to modify that document down the road and change it and alter it in any way, then my digital signature will be invalidated, and it will show a red X. So that's how it works with the digital signatures for Florida Department of Transportation. Lastly, in our efforts for e-construction, we had to deal with the changing of the specifications. For over a year, we've had a special provision out there allowing our districts to use the special provision to implement e-construction. Well, we made the conscious decision that in July of 2016, we are completely going paperless and flipping the switch. So we went ahead and tweaked that special provision language and moved it into our standard specs under the Section 4 scope of work. And what we did is basically, to sum it up, referred back to Chapter 668, and that if you're going to do business with the Florida Department of Transportation, you're going to do so electronically with regards to that Florida statute. We also, in addition to making that changes to the standard spec, much like Michigan did, we went through the standard spec book and did word searches and tried to eliminate any terminology that would conflict with operating in a paperless environment. So you might have something that says deliver 4 copies of such and such. Well, we just eliminated that language and put submit. Now, the reason for doing that, instead of just putting some standard language in the front of the book, was to make it clear that this was the direction we're heading as an agency. We're not turning back. We're moving forward into the digital age, and we didn't want to have any discrepancies. So this really sent a message to everybody that we are serious about going paperless, and this is the direction we're heading for the future. So with that, I'm done. I will turn the presentation over to Robert.
Thank you, Amy, but before Rob comes on, I have some polls for everybody.
Thanks a lot, Kat. So again, my name is Rob Fiegel. I'm an air engineer with the Michigan Division. I've been doing that for about 5 years, 10 years with Federal Highway.
Okay, just
So I'm
the
going to give you
last
a
few
brief
coming
overview
in,
of
and
what
then I'm going to
ProjectWise
switch
is
back
and
to
from the
the
website.
presentation in a couple seconds.
It's probably a little bit more high level than what you heard from Stu and Amy.
All right, Rob, over to you.
Just briefly, I wasn't really involved with getting through the firewall, but from what I understand, it took about 6 months to get access to the state's ProjectWise software system to break through the firewall so that the software in our system could talk to MDOT. So just planning ahead, a lot of this does take a lot of time to do. I'll mention e-signature. There was a small learning curve when we first started to do e-signature. It's a strange experience to not put pen on paper and to sign electronically, but I think that it quickly became secondhand. Once you start doing it a few times, e-signatures have been around a long time in the federal government, and we've had statutory authority to do that for years and years. It wasn't a big deal as I thought it would be. Once we started using e-signature, that really started our whole office down a path where we took a look at all of our standard operating procedures, and we tried to find ways to streamline and incorporate electronic signature. And I've been doing that over the last year and a half, updating and streamlining standard operating procedures. And once you start down that path, it really gets you into looking at, well, all of your documentation. Anything that we generate in the office, now our policy is to try to keep it in an electronic format through the entire life of that document. And that has freed up a lot of front office staff time, and it frees up a lot of time for the air engineers as well. So when we talk about benefits, there are a lot of, you get the hard benefits of being able to just be able to get in there. But you think about being able to audit a project without leaving the office, or if you forgot something, you can pull those project records, and it's quick, it's easy. You know who has a particular document if it's going around for signature. If you're doing a contract modification and there's a question that comes up, it's not going to sit in someone's inbox for a week while they're waiting to respond to you. You can go in there yourself, and if you want to look at the correspondence folder or the supporting documentation, 1365, you can see the state's copy. It's all right there. You don't have to bug the state, and so you're really saving time and being able to do this yourself. This year we had our compliance assessment program, or our CAP reviews. This is the second year we've done CAP reviews. While a lot of the CAP program did focus on local agency projects this year, which are just starting to get piloted in Michigan, it was still useful on the trunk line projects. We were able to do the reviews from our desk. For better or worse, you lose a little bit of time in the car, but you can get in there and you don't have to bother other people. It's just faster, it's quicker. Digital signatures, being able to approve things. You can do it when you're teleworking. It's fast, it's easy. If you're out on the road, you can still approve documents. We had a case, we had an instance I think it was last year, we had to do, it was the first diverging diamond in the state, and it was going design build. It was a very high profile project, and we were trying to get the interchange access justification report in, and the state was a little late getting it in. It was kind of behind the ball, and my supervisor was in Detroit the entire week, and we were able to get that signature page to him. He was able to electronically sign it, and what it really meant for us was, since it was a design build contract, it was more days in design for something that we had never done in the state before. So the value, it's hard to put a value on that. Sure, you could say, well, maybe we would have faxed it over to them, but we definitely would have lost time. We'd probably add on a day or two. So that's a real tangible benefit. Just for having e-signature alone, I think that you can really hang your hat on. And then electronic documentation. having fewer paper documents, I can see a change just in our office alone. Is a lot of the drawers are emptying out. It's not a big deal because we have certain record retention policies for different types of documents. We put it on a flash drive, we drive it over to the archive. Again, it's not a big deal. So there's not too many things that are throwing up speed bumps when you're going down this road. It's kind of quicker, faster, easier, and I don't think we've really looked back. I'll put one last final plug in when you talk about anecdotal stories. I think they mentioned it early on that we were piloting these iPads. I think the Texas and federal lands are piloting some of the, we're also piloting Surfaces, small tablets as well. But if these iPads, this is something I think that's been successful so far as a pilot. I don't want to talk too much into that because they're still going to evaluate it, but I think so far it's been very successful. It's something that we're looking to expand to other states, and you don't have to look any further than about 5 minutes ago when the internet went down. The air card and the iPad allows us to continue with the conversation today. So they're continually proving their usefulness, and I don't think we're looking back. It's been very successful, and I can't say enough good things about e-construction and e-signature and all the work that Michigan's been doing on this front. Thank you, and I'll turn it back.
All right, thank you, Rob. So I have a couple polls here. I'm going to send you a few quick polls now. So some for Rob, and then we'll do the evaluation as well afterwards. All right, without making you dizzy, I'm just going to jump straight to the evaluation instead of back to the presentation. So if you could just do our webinar evaluation quickly, I'd appreciate that. Okay, thank you. So a couple things I want to point out as we go into the Q&A session. First of all, you just did the evaluation, so thank you. There are PDH certificates available only for people who are on the live run. This webinar is recorded. If you're watching a recording, I'm sorry, the PDH deadline has passed. In order to get a PDH certificate, you need to follow this link that you see on the slide. You can click it now, or it will be available in the next window, and it'll actually be, you'll be able to come back and click it at the end when we're done with the Q&A. When you go there, that is a Google form. So if you're working from a DOT computer, you may find that that Google form is blocked. There's nothing we can do about that. You will have to email yourself the link and perhaps do it from home or do it from your smartphone. Okay, so I'm going to switch into the Q&A view now. Just bear with me. All right, and then a reminder, you can keep your questions coming in. The Q&A dialog has moved now. It should be on the top right of your screen. And
Hold
I'm going to go through the questions that I see there. So if you add your question to the chat, there's a good chance I'm going to miss it. Also, I might cycle back through the polls if I'm able to manage all of that. So the first question, I'll point that one first to Stu. What was the approximate cost involved to furnish all the inspectors with smartphones? Do you know?
I think each one of our iPads cost about $630. In terms of smartphones, we just went through this exercise, and we leave it up to our districts. They purchase their own phones.
So no bulk buying discount then, huh?
Platforms, whether it's an Android or an Apple, and that's dependent upon.
Okay. Amy, do you have a ballpark cost for your mobile devices?
I have quantities, but not costs. Okay. You were going to ask that. I'm trying to pull it up right now.
So how many have you guys rolled out? You said you had it. All right, no, that's fine. If you don't have it, that's okay. All right.
It has more of that
Thank you.
encryption into it with the digital signature.
There was a question of what is the difference between digital and electronic signatures, and Amy, I think it came in before you were giving us that really great explanation of a digital signature. So I think I'll just say, suffice to say, the electronic signature is not secure and the digital signature is secure, unless somebody wants to correct me.
A lot more of the definitions of everything for the digital signatures.
And I think Amy touched on it, but that public key and private key portion that belongs with digital signatures is an important piece. Yeah, that's correct. For Michigan, our document management system is ProjectWise. Yeah, in fact, with the success of e-construction, we're starting to use ProjectWise.
Stu, the next question is for you. When you mentioned document management software, you were referring to ProjectWise specifically, correct?
So its use is expanding in Michigan.
And you use that for not just construction, but you use it for design as well?
I do have the number for the smartphones. We have about 278 statewide with all our district folks in central office. That is what is proposed, because a lot of them we were switching over. We had the old flip phones, so we're switching over to the smartphones. And our philosophy here with the data plans is if you have a smartphone and an iPad, that you'll hotspot off the smartphone to use the iPad for the data. But we're providing the cellular-based ones. You just won't turn on the cellular if you don't need it. No, I don't know. That's a OIT thing. They have contracts with a lot of the major providers, and I think usually in the districts, because, you know, regionality, one provider might be more dominant than another. It's whatever the best deal they get.
Okay, so thank you. There's a follow-up question on mobile devices asking what is the annual cost to maintain the equipment and data plans? Do you have any idea about that? Amy?
I don't have a number either, but I would like to note that in addition to paying, say, Verizon as our carrier, we also pay our IT department to help us maintain those devices. So there's a couple of different charges associated in Michigan with those mobile devices.
Okay, thank you. Stu, do you have anything from the MDOT perspective?
Yes,
The annual maintenance cost for equipment and data?
In Florida, our OIT puts on all our devices, whether it's a tablet or a smartphone, a mobile device manager, an MDM. So it's their kind of virus software, security software that kind of keeps things under control. So we don't have free range of our mobile devices. It's still kind of, Big Brother's still operating those
That is
devices.
a great point. Thanks, Stu.
Well, that's kind of what we're going through an exercise right now. Originally, our executive management wanted us to be device neutral, and we're trying to convince them to put that off for a little
And
while.
the next question,
because
when
iPads
inspectors
really
are
are not
outfitted with a tablet,
We've been able to do a lot
specifically
with
for
them,
using mobile apps
especially
like
having
Mobile
Office
Inspector,
360 and being able to use
is the
OneDrive,
tablet
OneNote,
in
and
addition to a laptop that they already have, or does it
Excel
replace a
apps, but
laptop?
we still can't get
So
into our
how's that
network.
working in
So
Florida?
we're trying to get them to maybe put that policy off for a couple years until we can evaluate technology and maybe eventually do a Windows-based tablet. So we have not fully implemented all the iPads. We're still trying to get funding for them. So we're still trying to work out those details with management and get the funding to purchase the 287 iPads that we want to purchase.
In Michigan, you have a choice. If you are a mobile worker, you have the option to have an iPad and a laptop along with your iPhone. If you choose to have a Windows tablet, such as a Surface, you don't get the iPad or the laptop. So the iPad and laptop combination would be replaced by a Windows device using the hotspot.
Okay, thanks.
For your internet.
Yep, go ahead.
You get the smartphone, but not the laptop.
So I'm sorry, if you choose for the Windows tablet, do you still get the laptop and the smartphone?
We get that from the state.
Okay.
And I believe that's in all locations where the division office pilots are. They're being included as a customer under the
I
state.
think that's the last one on mobile devices. So we're going to switch over to document management systems. Let's see. So first question, who pays for the division office ProjectWise or document management system license fee?
We will, yes, it will be able to put in those CAD zip files. I'm not sure about the reference files. You mean, I guess, in terms of the directory, the project directory, and if it's in another directory and the file is referenced into another directory.
Another question for Amy. Have you experienced do you use ProjectSolve for managing CAD files? And if so, how does it manage MicroStation
CAD
reference files.
from ProjectSolve. From what my understanding is, the people will basically take the CAD zip files and put them onto their own local directory if they're using them. We don't really use them. We're not using them for as-built. We use PDF files for as-built. So how often the CAD file will be opened in construction, I'm not sure. I don't foresee it a lot, but we have the files there in case any of the stakeholders or anybody needs them. I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Okay. Thank you.
No.
So have any of you noticed a diminished ability to change your processes quickly because you're using common off-the-shelf products?
What you want to do
Has choosing common off-the-shelf products been a delay in any way?
Is design your business process and use your software to help that rather than the other way around.
Has using common off-the-shelf software products or hardware products diminished your ability to change your processes quickly to go electronic or digital?
Dynamically configurable, so it can meet our needs, and we've been sort of, I guess, programming and developing those workflows to follow our processes now. So we really haven't had anything because it's so cookie cutter off the shelf. It's been more configurable for us at FDOT.
The state pays for all the license. There's no, currently there's no charge to the contractors for ProjectWise license. They don't get licensed to the full software, so they can't create their own data on the document management system. They are only bound by the DOT's data.
There's a question about the ProjectWise licenses, and just so for Stu, do the contractors pay their own license, or does the state reimburse those costs?
They can't create their own storage areas, for example. They can't use it for their company document management system.
So they can't upload things?
The iPads for the Federal Highway Division pilot were purchased by headquarters under our e-construction initiative, and they will be returned to headquarters IT at the conclusion of the pilot, pending the outcome of the report.
Sorry, there's lots of questions, and I'm trying to pick through to organize them.
For all of them. All the devices.
Another question
were purchased
on mobile devices. For the division office, who purchased iPads, or are you using iPads?
Our central office.
Was it the division or headquarters?
For the pilot project, and we're letting the districts go ahead and keep those iPads for their use. In terms of statewide, we're trying to get funding as a whole to make the lump sum initial purchase of the iPad.
And what about in Michigan?
We had a legislative budget request that got turned down last year just because of political reasons, because the House left early, and I think it just got rushed. But so we're trying to find alternative funding for the iPads and still try to make the one lump sum purchase. If we can't do it lump sum, then it'll probably have to be phased in through the districts and through their budget entity.
That's correct, just the ones that are purchased by headquarters. I think we have them for 2 years, and then I think they revert back to headquarters at the end of the pilot.
Okay. Rob, does the Michigan division have just the iPads that were purchased by headquarters, or have you got additional ones?
I personally, if I did an inspection report, I would fill out a second report saying that with the correction.
Okay. All right. I have a question that is perhaps quite broad, but how do you handle an error on an IDR, so an inspector's daily report? How would you handle an error?
We do leave that up to the staff monitoring the project.
Anybody.
So, once the daily report is created, it's printed to PDF. That report gets reviewed, whether that's before or after it gets into ProjectWise is up to the office. But the final document, the final approved.
So Stu, how does Michigan handle inspectors' daily reports? Are they going into ProjectWise or some other system?
For the daily reports, they do them through Site Manager. We still have Site Manager. We'll always have Site Manager, but we're looking forward to it when it goes web-based. But right now, they do the daily reports through Site Manager, and that's where it's housed. One thing that's unique with Florida, and I'm not sure many people know, is that all of our inspectors are consultants now. I think we only have a handful left, and that will be the rest through attrition. By the mid-2016, those will all be out.
And Amy, what's the FDOT process for IDRs?
So what consultants use, the consultant CEIs use, you know, in terms of mobile devices, digital signatures, etc. It doesn't matter to us as long as they're able to connect into ProjectSolve, and they also have that access to Site Manager still as well.
Other than that we already had it and we didn't have to buy something new, it certainly was a tool. We had that institutional knowledge here in the department for the tool. It did take quite a bit of work to configure it to the construction process, and we're actually still making some slight modifications in the way that ProjectWise
Okay.
works with our documents to make.
Stu, can you explain why MDOT chose ProjectWise to manage submittals?
So we did not, because we already had it, we didn't have to go through the evaluation process of other softwares that were out there. We could turn that pilot around pretty quickly. Having said that, however, we are happy with our ProjectWise solution, and we're not changing that at this point.
I would say making sure that your field folks are going to use it. My biggest thought with all of this, with the mobile devices, is that everybody already had laptops, and the laptops are pretty small right now, but they weren't out there using them to do inspections daily and data collection. So it needs to be something that you can use out in the field that's durable and
Okay,
provide
thank you.
that.
One more question on mobile devices, and that is, what are the important factors in evaluating and selecting the mobile devices? Start with Amy.
You have in place.
We needed a device that was cellular capable, which at the time the iPad was the only device that was cellular capable. GPS enabled, have the ability to take photographs. That was important to us. So that was the main criteria, which in 2012 was pretty limiting. Now in 2016, you're seeing more and more devices that are capable of those functions.
Thank you. Stu, what about in Michigan? What are the criteria for evaluating and selecting the mobile devices?
If I understand the question correctly, the iPads that we got are only from headquarters, but I think what he was asking was for a lot of the apps that are available.
Okay, thank you.
We use the environment.
So, Rob and Stu, there's a request for you guys to speak up, by the way.
It comes with something to edit PDFs and something to edit Word documents.
How are the proprietary software and equipment handled that use FHWA funds? So is that an issue? Are you using FHWA funds to buy project-specific devices, or is this how are you managing that?
I think that answered your question. Me personally, I've not had to help the state purchase anything, but you know, if I was in one of those states that hasn't done this before, yeah, I would think it's eligible. We've done things like that in the past where we've purchased software, laptops, cameras.
So that's actually a good point for the division office folks on the line, but I think that this is speaking to federally funded projects, and so if how are federal funds being used, are they being used at all for the mobile device environment? So on a federally funded job, you could have the contractor furnish a computer. So how is that working with mobile devices?
We do use a few paid apps on our mobile devices, but none of those are come through project funds. They're all state-funded applications.
No, all our stuff is paid by the state. Nothing's coming through FHWA as of yet. We don't have any of the paid apps. We've just paid through the pilot project through central office. So there's nothing been,
So Stu and Amy, do you have any experience with that?
That needed to be developed for the iPads. We tried to make it again with the ProjectSolve where we don't need anything really in particular. And again, since we have consultant CEIs, whatever they're going to use for their inspection, it's going to be up to them as long as they get the data into ProjectSolve. Correct. supposed to be pulling them electronically. That was the whole point of that, and then providing the PDF plan sets is that they can pull it off of ProjectSolve and just access it and have it at their fingertips. So if they just need a couple plans,
so the inspectors, your consultant inspectors, are furnishing their own equipment as opposed to the contractors furnishing equipment for the inspectors.
Paper plan set.
Okay.
I'm sure.
There's a question about using electronic plans. So are contractors actually using them electronically, or are they printing the electronic plans and proposals?
Whether they print out a PDF copy, that's really up to them. They certainly have the ability. If they have the ability to do it, we don't stop them. There's no ban on paper. There's still a lot of it out there. The difference is it doesn't become a record document.
Correct. I agree.
Is that what you're seeing in Michigan?
I would say no. I mean, I think you're going to go ahead, Steve.
Sorry, Amy, I had to laugh at that.
Yeah.
There is no reason you can't get a document in an email, print it out, fill it out, scan it in, put it back in an email, have somebody else print it out, scan it in, and then put it in your document management system. You can still do that. Why you would want to do that, I have no idea.
That's a good segue into this next question. Is there a process in place to prevent an inspector from filling out paper reports and having an office person scan them into the document management system?
Where that's still going to happen. That's what, when I've got questions, about these little hang-ups on things and people are panicking, I'm like, if you have to scan it, you scan it and put it into our document management, put it into PSSP. That's fine. It's just going to be a culture change for everybody. So that's the way you kind of got to look at it and realize that it's a transition period and there's going to be bumps in the road, but in the long term, it's going to become a mainstream way of doing business.
In fact, on our pilot projects, we did provide a scanner for some of the pilot offices, and they really never used the scanning functionality. Once they got used to just adding those documents into the document management system, they found no need for that tool.
All right, we have only 3 minutes left, and so I'm going to try and get through as many of these as I can. There's a question for, are you still collecting paper tickets with materials paid for by the ton? And as far as I'm aware, only Iowa has the pilot, so I'm providing that link. If Stu and Amy, if either of you have a system for getting rid of paper tickets, then let me know. I also want to point people out to the web links pod, which is in the middle at the top. We've got links to the recordings page, the Federal Highways e-construction site, MDOT's wiki, the reports from the previous peer exchanges that have been concluded, Florida DOT's e-construction how-to guide, the brochure for the webinar series, that PDH data entry form is there as well. The request for information for EDC4 technologies is there, and then this Iowa e-ticketing is there. And in order to use those links, you just click on the one you want and then move down and click on the Browse To button.
The life of the construction project and EDMS is our long-term storage site, so nothing's changed for us.
So one last question.
I think for the Michigan division.
And that is about archiving. So have your rules for archiving changed? You know, like I think Rob mentioned putting things on a flash drive and archiving the flash drive. But flash drives weren't really around 10 years ago. Will they be around in 10 years' time? And so how are you're archiving things? Are you using ProjectWise? Are you using ProjectSolve? What's that process?
So I think we were retaining stuff maybe that we didn't need to. So aside from, you know, the stuff we didn't really need to archive, nothing's really changed for us.
And Michigan's document retention policy sees no difference between a paper document and an electronic document, so we treat those documents the same as far as our retention policy goes. Our electronic documents, we're still developing a system within ProjectWise to archive those electronic documents that have been in there for now quite some time. That's correct.
You reminded me of one story I forgot to tell. Is that I think there was some. We talked about archiving. You know, before when we used to get a contract mod, the front office would take it. They give it to us. It'd probably spend a day in my inbox, and then I'd sign it. They'd take it. They'd scan it, archive that, and then send out the snail mail copies. Well, that's been talking about streamlining. I sign the contract mod electronically, and I'm the one who's now putting in the archive.
So current, your documents are still current on your ProjectWise server, and that has disaster recovery and what have you associated with it, but you're trying to stand up an archival system?
It's good and it works very well, but it did
Gotcha.
take us a long time to figure out where we were going to store the files and what to name them. And I think that actually took about 1.5 years. So caution you, try to, if you can, flush out some of those processes ahead of time instead of waiting until after you get the e-signature, because we had maybe a year's worth of contract mods we had to archive, and it's better to get ahead of the system. It might take longer than you think, so I just wanted to add that in. Thank you.